Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA. Ocala.
All right, 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. One of the favorite things, I think, Robin, that you and I experience this time of year is the creativity of people who create lasting memories. You know, there's something interesting about the whole phenomenon of winter stories, winter songs, Christmas songs and stories. They seem to be warm, and that's kind of a weird thing in the coldest season of the year, right? But they're warm, and I think the warmth is what brings us back to them each year. Steve Burt has been with us before for a different reason, for some other books he's written, correct? He is known as the storyteller of the heart. He's contributed to Chicken Soup for the Single Soul, Reader's Digest, Writer's Digest. Do you live in Ocala or Dunellen?
We live in the Villages.
In the Villages, okay. But you're in Ocala as far as we are concerned. You're an award-winning author. The book we're going to focus on today is called A Christmas Dozen. And for the listeners, it is a nice gift at the end of the show where we're giving away the books that Steve has written. Christmas Stories to Warm the Heart is the subtitle, and with Steve is Jolyn, his beautiful wife, and she's here as well. Are you also an author?
No.
No. Okay, you support the author, right?
I edit.
You're the editor.
I'm the editor.
Okay,
yes.
you catch all the inconsistencies and grammatical things,
Right.
etc. Okay.
He's a retired middle school teacher and a wicked editor.
And see, now it's all coming back. I remember this discussion once
Yes.
before. And then there's also a project we don't want to forget to mention, the homeless. Is it called the Homeless Kids Project?
It's called the Pajama and Book Project.
The Pajama and Book Project. Let me write that down.
Pajamas and Book Project.
All right, and what is that? Let's start there, I guess.
Well, okay, that's a project that's we learned about it from the Ruby Razzleberry's Red Hat Society in the Villages. My wife's a member of that, and they were supporting it. And they were supporting the Girl Scout Alumni Association, which was supporting this project with the Tri-County, Marion Lake and Sumter County United Way agencies. And it's a project with trying to get for the 5,200 homeless or in transition kids, that the names they got from the schools in the Tri-County area and the forest, get them a pair of pajamas and a book, because most of them are living basically out of a backpack, and that's about all they can handle. There's no sense giving them a big major item like a toaster or a toaster oven, because they're not going to be able to carry it around. So that's the project run by the three agencies and supported by these others. So it's a big project down in the Villages. So we saw the opportunity, since we don't have a lot of money, as I'm a retired minister and Jolyn's a retired school teacher.
Right.
We don't have a lot of money, but we said we do have a lot of books in our warehouse right now. So we gave over 3,000 Christmas books, of copies of this book, A Christmas Dozen, to the project. They needed 5,200, and we gave them 3,200 or something like that altogether.
That is awesome. You know, Robin and I, each year, we support the Marion County Literacy Council, and what they do is they teach adults who never learned how to read how to finally read. And it's a life-changing experience for them to have that skill. When children, and I'm sure both of you as a minister and as a teacher, you recognize that first part of our lives, learning to read, is what we take with us the rest of our lives, if we have been that blessed to be able to say we were taught how to read.
Absolutely.
And you know what? The one thing that gets anybody to read is a good story. That's the one thing, especially as a child, the one thing that's going to keep your nose in that book is a well-written story. So
we have an award-winning book with 12 Christmas stories in it, and we put in a kicker. We spent about 5 days autographing the books so that these kids would and putting a slip in there telling that it's an autograph book, because most of these kids will never meet an author, and a lot of them don't ever have a chance to have a book because they're on the run with a backpack. They don't have a bookcase or anything. So we let them know that they also had an autograph book, and maybe someday we'll hear from one of them saying, "Oh, you changed my life back 40 years ago." something about 30 years ago.
And maybe you will, yeah, I'm sure you have already, whether you heard about it or not. I'm sure it has changed some lives. So tell me about this particular book. It's called A Christmas Dozen, and there are 12 stories in here, correct?
12 stories, and they started back 30 or 40 years ago when I was in parish ministry. I was in parish ministry for almost 35 years in New England, and I wrote a different Christmas Eve story for the Christmas Eve candlelight services every year rather than do a sermon.
Oh, wow.
So that's how they developed, and then they got into Chicken Soup for the Soul and Family Circle and other national magazines, and then we put them into a book called, originally it was called A Christmas Dozen from the Christmas Story Pastor. And I've done thousands of programs in the Northeast reading this. And in fact, this week I'll be at University Congregational in Orlando doing the program in the morning at 10:30 in the morning.
So, and that's one of the things, too, that we often take for granted about ministers is that you are all writers. I mean, every time we hear a sermon, it's written by the person giving it. I mean, there might be some exceptions. Maybe somebody's pilfering somebody. Is that the word, pilfering?
Yes.
When you steal somebody's words?
Yeah.
But
Plagiarizing.
Plagiarizing. Yeah, maybe that's it. But I'm guessing that all pastors are writers to some degree.
Some degree. Some degree.
You have a knack, though, for writing something warm. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's not always
that may be true.
Across the board.
That may be true.
Yeah. So you didn't sit down and say, you know what, I want to write a Christmas book. These are actually, are they?
I sat down every year and I said, I want to write a Christmas story. And I did it for 28 years in a row and took the top 12 and put them in a book called A Christmas Dozen.
How do you decide the top 12?
I just kind of looked at them and judged by audience response and which ones.
Oh, you remember how the congregation reacted?
Yeah, pretty much.
Really?
And they started out, I took the stories that I had in magazines and I read them in nursing homes and senior centers and churches.
And you get reactions
Got reactions, and people said, where can we get these as a book? So finally we created a book. The book came out. I had 1,000 copies printed and went on the radio in Norwich, Connecticut, read a few stories, and people started showing up at my door saying, I need 10 copies in a hurry. I need 15 copies in a hurry. And in 2000 and 2001, it was a regional bestseller in New England. We sold 4,000 copies in 55 days without even being in a bookstore. People buying it off the porch.
Wow.
That is incredible.
Those are phenomenal numbers.
So
it's on Amazon now, too.
The first one is Christmas 1944.
Yeah.
I don't know if do you want to actually read one of them, or do you?
Yeah, I'd like to read one. I've got a story.
All right.
The last story in the book is called Pastor Cheese's Christmas Eve Communion.
Okay.
And it's about 12 and a half minutes long.
Okay, all right.
Well, it should work in about right. And to do this, you have to understand, we're in Florida, but part of it I have to use a Maine down east accent from Maine. Down east Maine is that section that goes up along the coast and joins with Canada.
Okay.
But a Maine accent is a little bit different, and if you haven't heard it before, it's a little strange, but it plays into the story here.
Are you from there?
I'm originally from New York, but I lived in Maine for a long time.
Okay, so you got the Maine accent. Okay.
So when you're ready, just tell me.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
This is a story called Pastor Cheese's Christmas Eve Communion. What a place to have to spend Christmas Eve on some little island off the coast of Maine, leading the candlelight service in a dinky church with a group of people he barely knew. Brad Cheesebro wasn't yet a full-fledged ordained minister. He was a first-semester student at Bangor Seminary 3 years from graduation. Yet because so many of Maine's small rural churches could not afford resident ministers, despite his inexperience, he had already filled the pulpit 4 times his first semester. 3 of those preaching dates had been at the tiny island church on Fairhaven, a 15-mile ferry ride from Rockland. Well, now, because he had no firm plans to be anywhere for the holidays, he'd been asked by the seminary's field education director to go to Fairhaven again, this time to lead their Christmas Eve candlelight service. When at age 34, Brad had told the elders at his home church in New York that he wanted to go off to theological school and be a minister, he had envisioned pastoral ministry as something different from Fairhaven's little podunk chapel. He'd imagined bigger and better things, more like the 1,500-member church of his minister uncle, the well-known, highly respected Reverend Dr. Timothy Todd Cheesebro. He had pictured a church with 2 or 3 services on Sunday, a semi-professional choir, parishioners galore to shake his hand after church and say, "Good sermon, great sermon, changed my life." Brad's 3 Sundays at Fairhaven had drawn crowds of 25, 23, 24, respectively. The choir was exactly as his seminary classmates who had visited there themselves earlier had described it. 3 voices in the choir, a flat, a sharp, and an undecided. He had to admit one thing, though. The Fairhaven folk were simple and genuine and earthy. After 3 Sundays, he knew this was a group of small-town characters, each unique and different. Ruthie Phillips was a character, no question about it. In her early 50s, she acted more like an 8-year-old. She'd been described to Brad as, quote, borderline retarded, end quote, and lived with her mother. Since she could not care for herself, family and friends on Fairhaven kept an eye on her. Ruthie loved being part of things, especially church, where everybody knew her name and knew what she was like. Each Sunday, Ruthie stood between her mother and her aunt, singing along, hymn book open to the right page. But she could not read the words. The hymnal was open simply so she'd be like everybody else. When Brad telephoned Nellie Cook, the organist, with the hymns he had chosen for his very first week preaching there, she had eliminated one and substituted another one for it. "It's not that I can't play it or don't like it, Reverend Cheesebro," she said, despite his protestations that he was not yet entitled to use the title Reverend. "It's not that it wouldn't go with your sermon topic either. It's just, well, Ruthie doesn't know that one." That was when Brad had learned Ruthie was, quote, borderline retarded, end quote, and that the consensus of the congregation seemed to be to make sure the worship service included hymns that Ruthie could sing too. Ruthie also loved church because she felt it gave her a job. She arranged the cookies for the refreshments time after every service. There was always a plate or two of wafers that were chocolate on one side, vanilla on the other, perfect for making all sorts of interesting designs, but not so many as to be confusing. When that first Sunday came, Brad saw what Nellie Cook meant when she cautioned, "You stand back. Ruthie really belts it out." She belted it out louder than the rest of the small congregation in her shrill, off-key crow's voice that pulled Brad off-key too. That annoyed him. So did her calling him in her thick down-east accent, "pasta cheese, pasta cheese," which everyone else seemed to think was cute and funny. They chuckled whenever she said it. "Pasta cheese." Brad had been to candlelight services before, but he had never led one as a minister, never planned one. This would be his first. "Why, we'll supply the candles," Nellie Cook's husband Bob said, speaking for the Board of Deacons. "Nellie can play any of those Christmas carols. You work out the rest." What the Board of Deacons did not expect, however, was that Brad would want to make a slight change from the usual. "Communion," Bob Cook said. "Communion on Christmas Eve? Why, Pastor Chesebro, the Lord's Supper has never been part of the Christmas Eve candlelight service here on Fairhaven." "Bob, listen. The way I've got it planned, it'll take hardly any more time at all. I can work it in with the candlelighting. The deacons won't even have to fill or serve or wash those little cups. It'll be a very moving, spiritual experience. Trust me, Bob." Despite Bob Cook's protests, Brad was insistent, and Brad won out. Christmas Eve arrived. The church was almost full. Evergreen wreaths hung from the lecterns, green garlands strung with bright red cranberries graced the sidewalls, and a beautifully decorated tree stood in the chancel behind the pulpit. But lovely as it looked to islanders, it looked dull to Brad. Dull. A reminder that he was alone and far from home on Christmas Eve. Everyone else had friends, family, someone. He had no one. "Why, you can really pack 'em in, son," Bob said with a wink. "I counted, nearly 90 in the sanctuary." "Well, how many did you have last year?" Brad asked, smiling bravely. He'd have gladly traded numbers for intimacy. "Oh, about 90, Bob said with a wink. "Year before that, too, 90. The island population tends to be pretty stable in the winter. When the time came for candlelight communion at the end of the service, Brad instructed people to circle around the outside of all the pews. He had choreographed this and run it over and over and again in his mind. First, he would pass the loaf of Nellie's home-baked bread around for each person to rip off a little piece. And then he would start the silver chalice. Oh, the silver chalice that he had borrowed from the seminary chapel, inviting everyone to wait for the chalice and then dip their little piece of bread into the grape juice and eat it, afterward passing the chalice along to the next person in the huge circle of 90. This, Brad assured the holiday worshipers, would symbolize Christian unity and sharing and, lots of other good things. Everything went smoothly. People circled like a wagon train just as Brad had planned. He started the bread to the left and each person took a polite piece. Then the chalice started on its way around, passed carefully because the grape juice was more than 3/4 of the way to the rim. People dipped their bread and ate their purple-stained pieces. They were quiet. They were solemn. They were almost somber, as if meeting clandestinely in the catacombs like the early Christians. Hardly anybody looked at anybody else. The chalice was halfway around the circle when the sanctuary's double doors swung open and in stepped Ruthie Phillips, back from arranging the cookies in the fellowship hall. Her entrance positioned her directly opposite Brad in the circle. Used to receiving communion in her pew, Ruthie was caught off guard by the unfamiliar configuration, nor had she heard Brad's instructions. Even worse, the woman before Ruthie, without thinking, handed her the chalice. Ruthie cradled the chalice close to her chest. Brad felt sweat trickling from his armpits, running down his leg. Everyone hushed, waiting. Would Ruthie move things along? Or would she embarrass Brad by messing up his carefully planned, innovative spiritual exercise? Ruthie did nothing. Brad's impatience grew. How could she do this to him? Then, in a flicker of candlelight, he suddenly, literally saw Ruthie Phillips in a different light. He glimpsed the panic in her eyes and could practically hear her asking for guidance, as if asking, "What do I do now, Pasta Cheese? What do I do now?" Before he could catch himself, he heard his own voice saying in a too kind, too ministerial, gentle Jesus voice, "The blood of Christ, Ruthie, take, drink." And with that, Ruthie's eyes lit up like a slot machine. She looked into the chalice, put it to her lips, and drank. Drained the whole thing, soggy breadcrumbs and all. Brad's jaw dropped in disbelief, but by then she was finished. She was done. There stood Ruthie Phillips, empty chalice in hand, proud ear-to-ear smile on her face, huge grape juice mustache on her upper lip. His choreographed candlelight communion was ruined. Brad's heart sank. But then Ruthie glanced around, noticing everyone looking at her. "Pasta cheese! Pasta cheese!" she said loudly in a childlike voice. "Isn't anybody else having juice?" Brad looked up from the floor, everyone in the circle waiting to see what he would do, all eyes on him now. It's special communion tonight, Ruthie," he said, and felt himself relax. Something registered inside. "You see," he said, "the last one to join the circle is the guest of honor and gets to drink the juice." Ruthie grinned. She'd gotten it right. The boy next to Ruthie gently took the chalice out of her hands, replacing it instead with his lighted Christmas candle. Then he dipped his scrap of dry bread into the empty cup, withdrew it, still dry and unstained, and he ate it. And everyone, when they received the empty chalice, did the same, dipped their bread into the cup's emptiness, and ate their dry crust. Eventually, it came back around to Brad, Pasta Cheese, who noticed for the first time that the folks in the circle were smiling and not solemn any longer as they lifted their little pieces of bread to their mouths. He had always believed communion was supposed to be solemn. Maybe he'd been wrong. People in this circle winked, seemed comfortable, acted relaxed. Something spiritual was going on after all, something Brad had not orchestrated or planned. And suddenly the decorations that adorned the sanctuary were lovelier than any he had ever seen. Something shifted inside him. Oddly enough, Pasta Cheese ended up the only one without a candle. But he had the empty chalice which he rested against his chest. He watched Ruthie Phillips across the circle from him, face lit by the glow of her candle, purple lips singing the carol like a crow, off-key, shrill. Fairhaven Chapel was no cathedral, was not at all what he'd thought he wanted or needed that night. But that night, Brad Cheesebro found himself warmed and embraced as never before by the spirit of Christmas. Empty chalice in hand, his cup overflowed.
Nice, very nice
Gave me
story.
chills. I got goosebumps. Dude.
That is
Here.
Steve Burt reading his own story. It's one of 12 stories in his book called A Christmas Dozen, Christmas Stories to Warm the Heart. And just before you started reading, I went to your Amazon page, and you have glowing reviews from people. One person writes, right before Christmas, our radio station plays one Christmas Dozen story a day, and they are narrated by the author. I've heard these stories over and over and can hardly wait to hear them again. And, of course, a 5-star review. And you've got some of these for us to give away today as well.
I brought in 12 extra copies because we have the 12 Days of Christmas and we have 12 stories as well. So that's 144 total.
Wow.
But you can give those away. There are gifts. And these are the same books that we gave the 3,000 plus to the homeless kids in the forest and the 3 counties.
Obviously, a great preaching technique, also a great ministering technique. Maybe a better word than preaching. It's a difficult job that both of you have done throughout your lives, trying to teach people things. Do stories? If I could just ask both of you, do stories help teach, and can math be taught with a story?
Well, I firmly believe that stories are a wonderful way to teach. And Steve is a master. He's really good.
Well, Jesus used stories to teach too.
Yes.
Sure did, didn't
Yes.
he? Didn't he? Well put. All right, I do have a dozen books here, so I need a dozen people to call me. You don't have to call right now, but if you don't and we give them all away, then you won't get one. It is a Christmas dozen. It is a wonderful book of 12 stories that were featured all over the place. If you go online, you'll find them. I know it's on Amazon because I went there. Do you have a website you want to tell us about?
We have a website called steveburtbooks.com, STEVEBURT books.com. On Amazon right now, the Kindle version of this is 99 cents, and in about an hour it goes up to buy another $1.99, so it'll go up to about $3. And for the next 5 days, we've got it jumping up $1.99, but starting at 99 cents right now for the Kindle version.
Okay. Let's take some calls and give these books away. And if you want to hear the callers, you'll need your headset on, just so you know. Good morning. You've got the first of the 12. Who's this?
It's Sonny calling.
Sonny, you got a book waiting for you.
All righty.
Thank you, Sonny. Appreciate that.
Thank you, and Merry Christmas to everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for calling, Sonny.
All right. Good morning. You've got one of the books. Who's this?
It's Lauren, and it's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lauren.
Did you say you have this out on that you've read them yourself?
You have an audio of this out there?
We don't anymore. The audios are out. There's one cassette version left on Amazon, and that's all they have left in stock, and then it's out of print.
Ooh, we got the last one.
Oh.
And it's on cassette.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. I bet you can't do them all over again, but it is on tape, and Larry can upload that maybe to YouTube or something. So,
as a matter of fact,
the one you read.
Yeah, this interview will be on YouTube for sure.
Good.
So great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Our
you,
pleasure.
Lauren.
Thank you.
All right. Good morning. You've got the third book. Who's this? Are you there? All right. Going once, going twice. Let me go to the next one. Good morning. You've got the third book. Who's this? Okay, nobody there either. Either that or the phone line is messing up. But we'll take the calls. We've got still 9 books left if you want, or 10 books left, right?
We've been having phone issues while you were doing the Ocala Magazine radio show.
Oh, really?
So Dan and Joe and the engineer are working on it right now.
Oh, okay. So if you couldn't get through, that's the explanation right there. Well, that was enchanting. Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you for coming in. Steve Burt, good luck on everything you do. You're always welcome to come back in here. I think it's perfect timing with Christmas. Jolyn, thank you for coming in as well. Both of you have a Merry Christmas. Thank you for blessing us with your stories and your presence.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Robin.
We'll take a little break and we'll be right back.
You're listening to WOCA News Talk 1370, Ocala's source for what's happening in today's hottest, up-to-date news and topics.
On December 21st, join us for the WOCA Jingle Ball, an evening at the Appleton Museum. From 6:30 to 8:30 p.m., come enjoy the beautiful collection of colorful trees, nutcrackers, and countless decorations throughout the Appleton Museum. Musicians from the Ocala Symphony Orchestra will be performing throughout the first floor exhibits, while you are enjoying holiday entertainment and culinary delights. Your donation will help provide Marion County children the opportunity to experience the magic of Christmas on Christmas Day through Ocala's Operation Feed 100 program. A limited amount of tickets will be available, so for more information and to purchase your tickets, go to WOCA.com and click on the Jingle Ball link.
Yes, George?
I'm going to Devon's Self-Storage.
You mean Devon's on 200 across from Hobby Lobby?
Yes. You know I have my own code to get in, and if I have a question, I just call 873-0777.
Didn't you just go there last night?
Well, yes. They're open late.
Didn't you go Christmas shopping this weekend?
Yes.
Then you went to Devon's Self-Storage?
Yes.
George, what are you up to?
Bye.
George.
ABC News Now. I'm Karen Chase. The lawyer for a woman who accused Heisman hopeful Jameis Winston of rape says the police report includes 152 pages of information about the victim and just 11 about Winston. She also claims Tallahassee police searched the accuser's cell phone and online records, but not Winston's. Prosecutors did not file charges. A Montana newlywed made a stunning confession in court just before closing arguments in her murder trial. She admitted she pushed her husband off a cliff to his death, but claims it happened during an argument and was not premeditated. She could face life in prison. New evidence that fashion can improve fitness. Researchers found when people wore lab coats, they performed better on certain tasks. They say enclothed cognition is an effect of what we wear on how we perform. Prince Harry and his band of wounded warriors have made it to the bottom of the earth. They arrived at the South Pole, successfully completed their Wounded South Pole Challenge for charity. The Mega Millions jackpot is up to $400 million, but because of changes in the lottery structure, the odds against you winning are also higher. This is ABC News.
Going back to the My Vectin thing, you cost me a lot of misery, and all total, $2,700 in doggy fees, and all it took was one container of Dynavite, 2 pounds, 3 ounces, and my dog has been cured. Abby's a 5-year-old silky terrier. She had like chicken pox on her belly, clusters of bumps on her back, and she was allergic to like 70 some odd things. So the dermatologist, it was, oh yeah, just keep giving her needles every 10 days, but she's not clearing up. And then it came up on my radio, Dynavite.
DINOVITE.com.
859-428-1000. And I was like, oh, that's it. I give her the Dynavite after 5 weeks. And one morning there was nothing there, and I'm like, oh my God, she's all clear. There wasn't one blemish on her body. Her fur is beautiful. She is totally happy. She is healthy, bump-free, pimple-free, shiny, silky. It turned our lives around. So thank you very much for Dynavite. I couldn't be happier. Dynavite's the bomb.
859-428-1000.
859-428-1000.
DINOVITE.com.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Life jackets save lives. Swear it, Florida. It'll be a beautiful day today with partly sunny skies, the high 69 to 73. Then partly cloudy tonight, low 58 inland, 65 along the coast. Tomorrow, partly sunny, breezy and warm. There may be a shower along the coast, dry elsewhere, the high 78 to 82. Sunday, variable cloudiness and warm with a shower or two, highs in the 70s to near 80. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
Ready or not, the holidays are here. And if you need a great gift idea, then give bottles of local wine from Island Grove Wine Company. They're locally owned and operated, so you can go visit the winery for a true wine experience. Located just north of Ocala off Highway 301, you can enjoy free tours and tastings. Open weekdays from 10 to 4 and holiday Saturdays from 11 to 4. For more information, call 481-WINE. That's 481-WINE. And don't forget a bottle for yourself.
Seth McBride here with Pastor Sports, inviting you to come down and check out our month-long Big Holiday Sale. You'll find huge discounts on our school spirit racks for local high schools, discounts on football equipment, baseball equipment, volleyball, and lots more. Check out our huge selection of Under Armour at huge discounted prices. Don't miss your chance to save this holiday season. Get the gear your kids want from Pastor Sports. Also, don't forget those customized items for this holiday season. Sale starts November 20th and ends December 20th. Pastor Sports, your local team dealer.
Here are today's headlines from the source WOCA. The Ocala Police Department is reporting a violent robbery of a convenience store early yesterday, during which the robber sprayed pepper spray at the clerk and then hit her in the side of her head with an unknown object. The convenience store is identified in the report as the Kangaroo Express at 3232 West Silver Springs Boulevard. According to the report, the robber, described as a heavy 6-foot-tall black woman wearing a black hooded sweatshirt and black pants, entered the store before 3 a.m., microwaved some food, and brought her purchases to the counter to pay for them. She then asked for cigarettes, and when the clerk turned around from the cigarette rack, the robber sprayed the clerk in the face with pepper spray. A video provided by the Ocala Police Department shows the robber then proceeding behind the counter, where she appears to hit the clerk in the side of the head, leaving the clerk lying on the floor behind the counter. The clerk, who was not identified in the report, was taken to Ocala Regional Medical Center with a wound to the side of her head. The robber escaped with the cash drawer, food, cigarettes, and a bottle of soda, according to the Ocala Police Department. Anyone with information about the incident can call the Ocala Police Department at 369-7000 or Crime Stoppers at 368-STOP. As the health insurance marketplace's website functions better and a crucial deadline nears, enrollment efforts are ramping up in Marion and Alachua counties to get as many uninsured people covered as possible. Enrollment counselors, known as navigators, are still running into problems with the website, healthcare.gov, but it's vastly improved from when it launched on October 1st, according to the counselors. Consumers who want insurance to kick in January 1st need to complete the process by December 23rd. Open enrollment lasts until March 31st for those who don't mind the coverage starting later. The federally run marketplace features a variety of insurance plans offered by private companies. Subsidies are available to help low and moderate income individuals and families afford coverage. Nearly 18,000 Floridians have signed up for coverage through the new insurance program, according to figures released by the Obama administration. About 3.8 million people are uninsured in the state of Florida. The Ocala Police Department reported the arrest of a 28-year-old woman who they say left her 4-month-old daughter in a vehicle in a parking lot while the woman was in a liquor store in Ocala. According to the report, Bethany Kathleen Douglas was in the store at least 16 minutes, as reported by 2 off-duty Marion County Sheriff's deputies who heard the baby crying and watched it until Douglas returned to her vehicle. Ocala Police Officer Dominic Bertalin responded to a call from the deputies and went to the ABC liquor store at 2595 Southwest College Road, where he witnessed Douglas removing the baby from the back seat. Bertalin interviewed Douglas, who said she didn't want to bring her daughter into the liquor store and felt it was safe leaving her in the vehicle because the weather was comfortable. Another officer arrived and took the child to the police department, where the Department of Children and Families was contacted. Douglas was arrested on a charge of child neglect and taken to the Marion County Jail, while a DCF investigator took custody of the baby. The Ocala Christmas Parade is scheduled to begin tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. The parade runs from the McPherson Governmental Complex down East Silver Springs Boulevard before turning north onto 8th Avenue. This year's theme is A Frosty White Christmas. The parade marshal this year is Daniel Owen, and the junior parade marshal is Dylan Williams. An estimated 60,000 spectators will be on the streets watching the floats, bands, and other participants ushering in the Christmas season. WOCA The Source will be broadcasting live from a remote broadcasting unit set